Next Wednesday, I believe Chaf Ches Iyar, if that's the date, is Yom Yerushalayim. And a couple weeks ago was Yom Ha'atzmaut. So we'll discuss some Minyane Eretz Yisrael and some Minyane Yerushalayim. So first some general Minyane Eretz Yisrael, and then we'll lead to specifically some Kedushas Yerushalayim, Kedushas HaMikdash, and the Temple Mount. So we know that Eretz Yisrael has Kedusha. We know Kedusha is Eretz Yisrael. So what type of Kedusha exactly does Eretz Yisrael have? And we'll get into whether the Kedusha Rishona, Kedusha Shniya, whether it became Bato or not. So we know in general, well actually there's three different levels of Kedusha. There's Kedushas HaMakam, like the Beis HaMikdash, perhaps Eretz Yisrael as well. There's Kedushas HaZman, there's the sanctity of time, Shabbos and Yom Tov, and there's Kedushas HaGavra. So we'll just focus on the Kedushas HaMakam for now of Eretz Yisrael. So we know there are other areas of halacha. We know there's Shabbos, there's Yom Tov, that's in Kedushas HaZman. And Mefarshim tell us, the Rav Salveshik wrote a lot of articles on this as well, the distinction between the Kedusha Shabbos and the Kedusha Eretz Yisrael. As the Yerushalmi writes on Shabbos, it's kiva v'kaima. That basically Shabbos, we don't have to do anything, whether we like it or not. Comes sunset tomorrow, it's going to be Shabbos. And the Rambam writes in the Sefer HaMitzvahs, without Klal Yisrael, there wouldn't be a Yom Tov. Maybe today the calendar is set up, but it's Makadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. There's a fundamental difference between Kedusha Shabbos and Kedusha Yom Tov. We're pointing out there's the two aspects of the Kedusha. There's Kedusha Shabbos and Kedusha Yom Tov. Kedusha Shabbos is inherent, that it happens by itself. As we'll see, we make a token Kiddush to have some participation, but basically it's inherently Kadosh. But Yom Tov, it's Makadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim, as the Rambam writes in Sefer HaMitzvahs. If Klal Yisrael didn't exist, then in theory there wouldn't be Yom Tov at all. In fact, that's what they point out as well. That's the Kedushas Bechor. That's like Kedusha Shabbos. So basically the Bechor, the firstborn, has inherent Kedusha, and we also have a halacha of Kedushas Bepeh. Nevertheless, we go ahead and Makadesh Bepeh. So that's how the Rav explained also the concept of Kiddush and Havdalah as well on Shabbos. The Rambam's opinion is that you learn them both from the same source. That the book ends. That basically Shabbos is a unique day, and we have to recognize it in the beginning, the Yitziyah, the Chnisa, the Yitziyah, so its entrance and its exit. And therefore, we go ahead, so to speak, and we make a token Kiddush and Havdalah, but in essence, it's even without the Kiddush or the Havdalah, the day itself would be inherently Kaddish. Masha'en Kein Yom Tov, Yom Tov is totally different. It's Makadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. And that's how, there are other reasons, but that's how some explain, that's why we have Kabbalah Shabbos, but we don't have Kabbalah Yom Tov. Because Kabbalah Shabbos we need, whether it's part of the mitzvah Tosefta Shabbos or not, but since Shabbos is coming, whether we like it or not, we want to go ahead and show we're bringing it in. So therefore we have a concept of Kabbalah Shabbos, etc. However, Yom Tov, there's no Kabbalah Yom Tov, it's redundant. The whole Yom Tov is a Kabbalah Yom Tov. There's no need to have any extra tefillahs bringing it in. And that's how they also, there's an interesting machlokas on this Nakuda, regarding Havdalah. Actually, Havdalah, when Yom Tov falls out on Sunday, Saturday night is the beginning of Yom Tov. So we all know on a regular Motzoi Shabbos, we have the Havdalah, we have the wine, but we also have the Besamim, and we have the Eish. So what happens if Yom Tov falls out of Motzoi Shabbos? So what don't we have? So we don't have the Besamim. So the question is, why not? Why is no Besamim? When Yom Tov falls out on Motzoi Shabbos, how come there's no Besamim? So the question we have to ask, why is there Besamim ever on a Motzoi Shabbos? For that, the Gemara tells us in May and other places that there's a Neshama Yisera. That on Shabbos we have a Neshama Yisera, and therefore we're downtrodden and depressed after Shabbos, so we have to smell the besamim in order to cheer us up a bit. According to Rashi, that's why we eat so much on Shabbos, because we have an extra soul to feed. So we know we have a Neshama Yisera on Shabbos. What about on Yantif? Well, if eating's the criteria, then we'd have to say yes. But putting that aside, maybe we gain more weight on Yantif, I don't know. But either way, what about on Yantif? Do we have a Neshama Yisera? So that's a machlokes, Tosfos and the Rashbam and Arvei Psachim, on whether we have a Neshama Yisera on Yantif. So if we have a Neshama Yisera on Yantif, so therefore we understand why you would make a besamim, because we're not losing anything. But according to, I think I might be mixing up the sheet, because I think it's the Rashbam who says there's no Neshama Yisera, so therefore how come there's no besamim on Motzai? That's Tosfos Kasha on the Rashbam. Tosfos, I think, says we have a Neshama Yisera. That's why there is no besamim. According to the Rashbam, that we do have one, so how come we don't make besamim? And secondly, he says, according to the Rashbam, what about Motzai Yontav Achron? Yontav's over Thursday night. So even if you're not going to make it in a case when it's on a Motzai Shabbos, but on any time Yontav is over, according to the Rashbam, you should make a besamim. So the kasha.
You mean on the Havdalah of Yom Tov, or the Havdalah of Shabbos?
No, on Yontav, in Havdalah and Shabbos, we make besamim.
No, not if there's a Yom Tov.
All right. Right. So
but even if there's no Neshama Yisera on Yom Tov, wouldn't the Simcha of Yom Tov obviate the need?
No, so that's a Tosfos, right? So that's a Tosfos writes. Tosfos writes the reason why that you don't need a besamim on Motzai Shabbos Yom Tov is you have something much better. You're walking by a nice bakery. It's one thing to smell the fresh challah, the chocolate chip cookies, or whatever you go for. It's another pleasure to actually go in and eat the challah. So he said, we don't need the besamim secondary. Simchas Yom Tov, we're going to be eating. There's no need for a besamim. We're losing it. But we have a meal. So we have a meal. So according to Tosfos, so he's saying we don't have it. We eat a meal, and therefore that takes the place of the besamim. That's the Tosfos word. That's what his kasha is on the Rashbam. What about Motzai Yom Tov Acharon? According to Tosfos, why don't we have it? If we're losing this Neshama Yisera, why not besamim? Because the meal takes its place. We don't need the besamim. So his kasha on the Rashbam was, which he leaves at a kasha. So what about according to the Rashbam? Why isn't it that we don't have besamim at the end of Yom Tov? That's what he leaves in the kasha. So there's a famous Avnei Nezer on this who says, because I know you saw it here, because there's a fundamental difference between Kedusha Shabbos and Kedusha Yom Tov. We know Kedusha Shabbos is basically its inherent Kedusha. Easy come, easy go. We don't have to put in much effort. We make a token Kiddush, that's it. But basically, it comes and goes. However, on Yom Tov, it's Makadesh Yisrael B'Hazmanim. We brought in the Kedusha. So if we worked hard to get to the Neshama Yisera working. So therefore, it doesn't leave immediately right after. On Shabbos, it's easy come, easy go. We lose it right away. But since we put in the effort, so therefore, you don't need Bo Raymond of Besamim on Yom Tov because it sticks around for a little bit afterwards. Whatever the pad is there, but it's the same Yisod. He brings down the difference between Kedusha Shabbos and Kedusha Yom Tov. So where does Eretz Yisrael fit in? Does Eretz Yisrael fit into Kedusha Shabbos? By that I mean inherent Kedusha. Eretz Yisrael by itself, by definition, it's a holy land, that's it. Or no, it's Makadesh Yisrael V'Hazmanim, or it's the Jewish people, the Makadesh. So that's what we'll see. By Eretz Yisrael, it's only a two-tiered system. So as the Tashbetz points out, that of course it has inherent Kedusha. We know by Avram Avinu, by the Avos, by the Bris, by the Absarim, that he promised, and this is the land, that's going to be the special land for the Jewish people. And the Lashon of the Pasuk was, as the Gemara says in Baba Basra Kuf Yutes, it's Kvar Nasati. It says Lazara. It should have said Lazaracha Etein. I think it said Lazaracha Nasati. Like, what do you mean Nasati? But we didn't get it yet. But it says Kvar Muktos. Those is right. The Gemara writes in Baba Basra Kuf Yutes that at that moment, at the time at the Bris Ben Absarim, it was considered, we were considered a muchsak already. In fact, that's why the Gemara talks about by Benos Schafkan, when they wanted the Pishnayim, they wanted the double portion. So the Gemara asked, what do you mean? Pishnayim only works b'muchsak v'lo min aray. It only works something that you actually have. It's not something you're going to have. So the answer is Eretz Yisrael was already considered muchsak. So there was inherent kedusha going back to the time of the Avos of Avraham Avinu. In fact, as the Gemara tells us in Avodah Zarah, Daf Ayin Gimel, we have a famous klal, Ein Adam Osir Davar She'eno Shalo. If someone walks into my house and starts worshiping the dining room table or other chairs and they make it into Avodah Zarah, so it doesn't become mutzar. They can do anything they want, but it's not going to impact me, because Ein Adam Osir Davar She'eno Shalo. Of course, if someone comes into my house and puts treif in my oven or my plate, it does affect me, because that's actually a maisa. Here we're talking about a makshava or a zara, so that then we apply the principle of Ein Adam Osir Davar She'eno Shalo. So in fact, that's what the Gemara talks about, because when the pasuk says when the Jewish people are going to enter Eretz Yisrael, to any of the trees that they were made for Avodah Zarah, Asherah, other things we have to get rid of. The question is, Ein Adam Osir Davar She'eno Shalo. What do you mean? It's all, how could the non-Jews, who cares? You can bow down all you want, make it into Avodah Zarah, it doesn't make a difference. So the Gemara says, you're right, but at the sin of the Cheda Egel, the Jewish people gave permission to anyone who wanted, they could use it for Avodah Zarah. So if not for us giving the non-Jews permission to use it, you're right, it would be Ein Adam Osir Davar She'eno Shalo, like that's the famous Ramban and Balamor by Chanukah. The kasha is, how could the Yavanim go in and mitame the Beis HaMikdash? Ein Adam Osir Davar She'eno Shalo. So some want to say Avodah Zarah is different, but the Balamor answer is that no, it wasn't the Yavanim. Unfortunately, it was the Misyavnim. It was the Jews. Only we have the ability to go ahead and mitame the Beis HaMikdash.
Coming back to Mekadosh Yisrael v'Hazmanim, aren't there some who hold that that's because of Kiddush HaChodesh? That Yisrael fixes the date of Yom Tov and does not fix the date of Shabbos.
Yeah, but that's what it's based on, right?
No, but there's a different reason that Mekadosh Yisrael was meant that if the Yisrael were not there, the other reason is if Yisrael were not there, then there'd be no Yom Tov.
Yeah,
so I'm saying, but even without that reason, the fact that the Kiddush HaChodesh is done by the Beis Din and is not like Shabbos, when it's done Min HaShamayim, that is a reason for saying Mekadosh Yisrael v'Hazmanim.
I thought that's part of it. I thought that's what he meant. It's literally part of. That's how we do it through Kiddush. We need the basin to go and say Mekudesh. We had to go ahead and make Rosh Chodesh, and hence the Yom Tov.
Yeah, but the basin doesn't declare Yom Tov. The basin just declares Rosh Chodesh, which fixes the date of Yom Tov. But the basin doesn't declare that we're going to make a Pesach.
No, but I'm saying, I would assume that meant by us we have to make Rosh Chodesh, and then Yom Tov is going to come in May. It's not. Obviously, we're going to go ahead and do what we have to. If you're asking Bisman Azel, we're going to bring in the Yom Tov, but that's what it means. You can't have Yom Tov without Klai Yisrael. I mean, you need Klai Yisrael to set up. Today we have the calendar set up. No, I hear what you're saying, but that's the way I saw most of them at first warn is they're assuming that's the same concept. But right, so technically they're setting up Rosh Chodesh, which is indirectly, setting up Yom Tov.
And the Gabi Kabbalah Shabbos. Was there a Kabbalah Shabbos before the Chachmei Tzfas introduced it? You said Shabbos has Kabbalah Shabbos and Yom Tov not. So how was that?
Yeah, that was.
What about before the Chachmei Tzfas?
No, right. That was more of a drish for it than halachic. What I'm saying is, but whenever Kabbalah Shabbos, remember the Gemara talks about it. People going into the fields, bringing in. That's what I mean. Kabbalah Shabbos like we have today. Like in broilers, they sit and do Chumash and Rashi after Mincha. I mean, it's not the formal Kabbalah Shabbos, the way we have it today. The fact how they used to go in and, go out to the fields and welcome and that type of thing. But, in that sense they meant it.
Oh, I see. It's
not the form. No, I'm sure that our Kabbalah, we have the people in Tzfas and they enhanced it. They put it, like more of a formal stance on a Kabbalah Shabbos.
But it existed before.
Right. Again, because you don't really have, because I said the Breuer's minhag is not to say it. Klal Yisrael does say it, but the minhag in Breuer's, at least in Washington Heights, was they don't do any of that. Not that I was ever there for that, but I was told they sit there and they learn in between, Mincha, Ma'ariv.
But they do sing the Chododi.
Yeah, possibly. I'm saying, but then, but let's put it this way: you could have a Kabbalah Shabbos and you could skip Kabbalah Shabbos, the formal one, and still have a Kabbalah Shabbos. In terms of what, right? You're right. In Sfas they made it into a big thing and all that, but the one with the Chododi, but that became more of a Kalbach thing later on. But that's a separate issue. That we have the hour and a half davening to bring in. The problem is you have to start an hour and a half earlier instead of waiting
to get all the Kalbach tunes in.
And the dancing. So getting back, by Eretz Yisrael is clearly the inherent Kedusha. We see from 8 other also Davar Shem Shalom Kvar Muksak that Klal Yisrael already was considered having it. And we see the Avos, the Torah spends a lot of time how important it was for the Avos to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. There's definitely an inherent, there's a part of Kedusha's Eretz Yisrael that's like Shabbos. There's definitely an inherent value. On the other hand, we all know as follows that there's a Kedusha's Eretz Yisrael like Yontif in the sense that it's Makadosh Yisrael, because we all know, and for all the mitzvahs of Tluis Baris, this week's Parsha, Shemitah, all the halachas, that when the Jews went into the land the first 14 years, the 7 years, Sheva Shekivshu, Sheva Shekol, because the 7 years they fought the wars, and the 7 years they split up the territory. It wasn't until year 15, which is year number 1, that the land out Kedushas Haaretz, in terms of the mitzvahs Hatluyas Baaretz, Truma, Meiser, etc., all those things, that didn't apply into the Jewish people who actually went in and was Makadosh land. In fact, that's what the Gemara tells us in Yuma. A simile, and in fact, even more that the Rambam even writes, Bizman Bayesheni, when the Beis HaMikdash was up, he says, Truma and Meiser were only D'Rabbanan. All these laws were only D'Rabbanan. Why? Because you need Bias Kulchem. You need the majority, you need all the people but Ruba Kakulo. You need the majority of Jewish people living in Eretz Yisrael to give it the full Kedusha. So we see it's Makadosh Yisrael. The Jewish people give a totally added Kedusha to the land of Eretz Yisrael. And in fact, that's what the Gemara tells us in Yuma, that Ezra learned from Shlomo, that the Gemara tells us that Ezra already knew, based on Shlomo, that how many Jews come back, and he had to turn back and go get everyone. He had to go back. How many people come into you? That would depend how long the Beis HaMikdash will be up, etc. We'll get to the Ravid Shita in a little while. But we see clearly from the Gemara in Zvachim that the mitzvahs Hatluyas Ba'aretz did not begin until year 15. So there's definitely, we see there's an inherent Kedusha of Kedusha Shabbos, that this Eretz Yisrael by itself, as well as Makadosh Yisrael B'Hazmanim. And in fact, that's this issue, whether it's Deraisa, whether the mitzvahs Hatluyas Ba'aretz are Deraisa D'Rabbanan, that's a major part of the question of the Shemitah, this week's parasha of Shemitah, but the whole issue of the Heter Mechira, that which came up in well before, but in the 1887, 89 was like one of the big ones, where on the whole it's a very controversial issue, selling the land of Israel to non-Jews in order to, or does it work? Can you sell the land to avoid it? So part of the whole discussion. There are many issues involved, but the Gemara in Gittin tells us the first question is, does it make a difference if a non-Jew owns land in Israel? Does that not make does that mean it's not Tevel, it's not Truma Maisa? That's a major machlokas in the Gemara in Gittin, whether it's a Yesh Kinyan or Ein Kinyan, La'akam Lahafkia Biyad Truma Samaisa. The famous Gemara in Gittin, if a non-Jew owns land in Eretz Yisrael, does it have any impact on the Kedusha? So that's a major machlokas over there in the Gemara. The Gemara concludes over there, in Eretz Yisrael proper, Ein Kinyan, you can't, the Trumas and Maisa remain the halakas. Even if you buy it, you have to take off, it's Tevel, you have to take off Truma Maisa. But in Syria, which was only Kibush Yachid, David HaMelech conquered privately, so that the Gemara says, yesh kinyan. You don't have to worry about it. So if someone to extrapolate from this Gemara, the Gemara is telling me a simple principle. If we're dealing with a din d'Rabbanan, so yesh kinyan. If we're dealing with the din d'Oraisa, ain kinyan. So therefore, some want to say then, it's a machlokas Rambam and Ravid, whether Bisman Hazeh, the mitzvah of Truma, all these things, Shemitah, all these things are d'Oraisa or d'Rabbanan. The Rambam says it's d'Rabbanan because it's bias kulchem. The Ravid says that's limited to Chala, some other halachas, but Truma might apply minat Torah even Bisman Hazeh. So according to the Rabbi, there'd be nothing to discuss because he holds it's a din d'Oraisa. But according to the Rambam, the way we paskin, that Truma Ma'isa Truma is only d'Rabbanan today. So some want to say based on this Gemara that we say yesh kinyan, and therefore we don't. If a guy owns land in Eretz Yisrael, we don't have to worry about it. It's the same thing for Shemitah. And then they want to take it the next step and say so too for Shemitah. The Gemara is talking about Truma Ma'isa, and then they want to extend it to Shemitah as well.
Why are we suggesting that things like Trumas and Ma'aser or Yovel are dependent on Kedusha Sa'aretz? If there was an inherent Kedusha, even before Avram Avinu, right, from Yisrael B'Rais or whatever it is before that, the Torah told me, Kisavoy La'aretz, there's a certain time frame. You won't have to do these halachas until such time as the majority of the people get there. So you can't equate the majority of the people coming to the land with the inherent Kedusha of the land. That's only a question of what do we have to do now that we're here. But it's the inherent Kedusha hasn't changed. That's
excellent, very good. That's the next step about this. You're machavan to the Beis Halevi.
Well, that's my name.
See, perfect.
I wrote that, Julie.
Right, as well, he says the Harabite.
We'll get to.
I mean, it's like a contradiction.
That he's right, because the Ravid will see. Right, the Ravid has the opposite of the Rambam. Right, we'll get to that shortly. So right, so it's the Beis Halevi says the whole comparison's ridiculous. First of all, what's the mahalach is that they're assuming the Gemara is saying if it's Rabban and Yesh Kidin, Trumas and Ma'aser, there's no bias kulchem, and therefore, and so too will apply it to Shemitah. Beis Halevi says, what are you talking about? It's nothing to do. It's a technical din bias kulchem, but see, Eretz Yisrael, as we pointed out, is a two-tier. It's a kedushim and a Torah. There's nothing you can do about it, no matter what. Then there's a second level in terms of agricultural, truma, ma'isa, that you need Makadosh Israel. But Syria, that's chutz la'aretz, that's not, midrabanan, we treat it as Eretz Israel, but there's no inherent kedusha at all. So that's what the Gemara says, yesh kinyan, on Syria. But even if you hold like the Rambam, that technically truma, ma'isa, even according to the Ravid, on Shar Peiros, because only Dagan Tirosh, but not all fruits are. So even according to the Ravid, who would say on Shar Peiros, they still agree that the Kedushas Haaretz is Darais, and therefore the Beis Halevi doesn't like to come. He doesn't like the Het Mechir either. He doesn't like this whole comparison to say for the Het Mechir by Shemitah. And Rav Chaim points out as well, there's a fundamental difference between Shemitah and Truma. The Gemara only talks about it regarding Truma and Maisa. So Rav Chaim says we could talk about it by Truma and Maisa because let's say there's a mitzvah of Hafrasha. So therefore, maybe you'll say, well, if a guy owns it, the mitzvah never begins. So therefore, you could discuss maybe it's never tevel. But by Shemitah, that's a shevi al tases. Avodas hakarka, he says you can't make that, even if it won't make a difference if a guy owns the land, it would be usher anyway. So Beis Halevi doesn't like the comparison because the Eretz Yisrael inherently has Kedusha. And even in the Rav Chaim, even if you would accept the distinction, it wouldn't make sense by Shemitah anyway. So they were the opponents of the Het Mechira.
How did you know that according to the Ravid, that Shar Peiros also? Why would that be the same as Syria?
No, I'm saying Dagan Tirosh v'Yitzah. There's certain according to everyone, there's certain things that are deraisa. So I'm saying
either the Rabbi ones.
So I'm saying even according to the Ravid. So I'm saying according with the Beis Halevi, say that Shar Peiros are D'Rabbanan, and that's a technical issue of Truma Maisa, but it wouldn't be an issue in terms of saying that the land doesn't have Kedusha.
Right, but the law of Shemitah may not apply to them.
Yeah.
Just the same way.
Yeah, right, isn't that right? So that's what it is, yeah.
When Nehemiah and Ezra came back, they had to Makadosh the land again.
Right, well, they did. That's part of the discussion, they did go on.
So then after the temple was destroyed, so then the need for all of this goes away, so
No, we'll get in. We'll see if I'll come to Kedushas and Mikdash in a minute. I'll come back to this. So also the Tziv also, for a totally different reason. Maybe not that he disagreed with this Lamdis, but I think his language is wolf and lion, or some animals. Or I use pan to the fire. It's wolf and lion. Which one's worse, the lion?
You left to do Rabbanon. You went to do
Exactly. So there's a pasuk Sechanim, which is a whole question exactly what does it mean, but maybe it means many things. But there's a prohibition in the Torah Sechanim, you can't give over land to a non-Jew. So he says, forget about it. He says, even if you're telling me that. Even if you're getting into all these issues, let's say you can avoid the Truma problem, the Shemitah. That's the Rabbanan. Today we pass them like the Rambam. All these are only issues on the rabbinic level. If you're going to give the land to the non-Jews, you're violating the biblical prohibition of Lo Sechanim. So he says you're going from the pan to the fire. What are we gaining? Better to violate Shemitah and keep Eretz Yisrael for yourself. And they also discuss the Chazon Ish, who happens to be very makel on the laws of Sharias only because he was against the Het Mechira, and he tried everything possible to try to be able to keep the laws without relying on the Het Mechira. But he discusses a different issue, like there's the Tosis and Bava Metzia, I think Daf Yud, the Gemara, because Tita says, so let's just say there's a whole issue of Yesh Kinyan and Kinyan. Then there's an issue of Lo Sechanin. Okay, you violated the Deraisa, okay, but the guy owns the land now. So let's assume you can't do it, but it's done. Post facto, the guy owns the land, so I want to know, so maybe I don't have to worry anymore. So he says it's not so simple. He says because he quotes different opinions, Tosis and Bava Metzia talks about the principle of Ein Shliach L'Dvar Aveiro. It's a principle that if someone sends you to do an Aveira, so Divrei Harav, Divrei HaTalmud Mishomim. Like, what are you listening to me for? God tells you not to do it, don't blame me. You're not considered my messenger. Ein Shliach L'Dvar Aveira. So that's a whole discussion in terms of what that means, but in terms of what the Gemara over there was talking about in terms of a Kohen and a Grusha. A Kohen can't marry a Grusha. So the discussion was, can I send a Shliach, a non-Kohen, and he'll be the, Gemara tells us in Kedushin you can appoint a Shliach. It's not necessarily recommended today, but you can send a Shliach to marry your wife. So if he's a non-Kohen, so that the Tosas discusses, of course you can't live with her anyway. The question is whether what's pshat is that the whole thing is not your shliach at all, it's meaningless, or it's chal, but you can't live with it. So the Chazon in his context brings it into here. He says if the farmer himself is selling the land to the Arabs, that's one thing, but that's not the way it works. It's worked through the chief rabbinate. So Ein Shliach L'Dvar Aveira, and therefore the whole sale doesn't even work. Depending on which day you're working. There are many different reasons. Many different achronim did not go over it. On the other hand, there were many Rav Kook, Rav Yitzchak and Spector, many other Gedolim. Again, whether they say it applies today is another question. In the 1880s, when there was a much different question, well, that's part of the question. Is it a different question or not? But there were many Gedolim who were proponents, and they came up with different reasons why. Some say the Lo Sechanin, the problem is only if it's permanent. But if you're doing it temporary, a Mechir Lizman, so that's not a problem.
Rental.
Right. And some say, anyway, what the whole purpose is, they're already there already. In other words, the Arabs own 20 apartments, so to give them one more piece, part of the problem is not to give them permanence, but Rav Kook said they already have it. It's not a matter of giving it to them, it's already there. And also, I think the Rav Sipek, the Frank also points out that the whole reason for it is also you don't want to mess up the Yovel cycle. But since today we don't have Yovel anyway, so then to many other people go, on the other side, so that's a question that goes on even today. Halacha l'maisa, but I mean halacha l'maisa means in North America, the OU, the Rav was very against it, and all the OU, Stark, all the hashkachas today do not rely on the het. They won't take anything that was used for the Heter Mechira. Because it's definitely not, not that in Eretz Yisrael might be a different question. They say it's not enough of a tzarech here, that you have to rely on the Heter Mechira to eat things. So none of the normative hashkachas in America, in Canada, would accept the Heter. That's what I mean by halacha. I'm not halacha in Israel, so it's still up to. I'd say most do not anymore. And then they have other ways out now. They've come up with new things in terms of how to try to work it.
Accept that. The new thing was it.
Oats are basic. Yes, I think they accept. Yeah, I'm saying the actual Heter Mechira, but now there are other ways of coming up. So that's all part of the issue. Whether the Eretz Yisrael has inherent kedusha, so there's a two-tier system, inherent kedusha versus then the second level of Makadosh Yisrael Vazmanim. So what about that's Eretz Yisrael itself? What about Yerushalayim kedusha and the kedushas Hamikdash? So that's similar. There's a machlokas in the Gemara regarding kedushas Eretz Yisrael as well as kedushas Hamikdash. Whether the first, let's say, when the Jews. Most Rishonim assume the Kedusha Rishona is talking at the time of Yoshua. There's one opinion, at least, maybe more, it says it's going back to the Avos, but we assume when we talk about Kedusha Rishona, we mean the time of Yoshua ben Nun. So it's a whole discussion in the Gemara, Kedusha Rishona L'Shaisa, L'Asid Ravo, and then it became Bato, and same thing like Kedusha Shniya. And it seems to be a similar Gemara, the same way they talk about in Kedushas HaMikdash. That what about in Yerushalayim, the Makam HaMikdash over there, when there's a Korban HaBayis, so what's the status? So there's actually a Tosis and Yavamas, a Ri, that brings down, he wants to say, he just says he comes up with a distinction, he says, by Kedushas Eretz Yisrael it's Bato, but by Kedushas HaMikdash it applies. And he goes on, it has three different sources, quoting different psukim, Bate Arichom, some psukim in Bahar. Has a whole long drasha, three different psukim, showing his distinction, why he thinks Kedushas HaMikdash still has the Kedusha today, but Kedushas Eretz Yisrael doesn't apply.
Wasn't that the machlokes of Kitchel Shata, Kitchel Tzidoro?
Yes, that's right. So that's part of the way he reconciles. So what he has a whole long discussion on, the Rambam spells it out, gives a svara to it. So the Rambam writes, there's a fundamental difference between, he says, in Kedushas Eretz Yisrael, so that could become bato. That once the Jews came in and left, it's over. But by Kedushas HaMikdash, it's not totally, it's kind of like Kedushas Shabbos in that sense. Hashchina eino bato. That even though you can knock down the walls, but the divine presence is always there, and therefore the Kedushas HaMikdash remains forever. That's the distinction Tosis makes based on Psukim, and the Rambam just gives the Svara. That Kedushas HaMikdash is based on the Shechina dwelling there, and therefore Hashchina eino bato, therefore no matter what, Kedusha remains forever. Kedushas Eretz Yisrael, from an agricultural point of view, that's not true. And the Ravid has the opposite viewpoint. He says Kedushas Eretz Yisrael is even today, it's forever. However, Kedushas HaMikdash is baton. He says the Rambam Svaras Atzmo, he writes. The Rambam makes up his own Svaras, making this, and it's just the opposite of what the Rambam says. And in fact, it's a very interesting Ravid, or depends which gersa it is. Either way, it's interesting. But one of the gersas when the Ravid writes is V'li Nira, and it appears to me, and he goes on to make his distinction. So somewhere in V'li Nira, if you knew the Ravid, he was a big makubal. So Linira, I got Ruach HaKodesh. The Rambam doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm right. There is no Kedusha in the Mikdash anymore, and Eretz Yisrael there is. However, others, I think Rav Kook among others, but other Achronim point out there was a total. So the part of the Vav got rubbed off. It looked like it's Nira Lo, or some Nigla Lo, meaning it's referring to Ezra. It was revealed to Ezra that when Ezra was Makadish, built the second Beit HaMikdash based on his Kabbalah from Shlomo, or wherever he got it from, he knew, he only gave it a set time. He knew it was going to be destroyed, and there was going to be a third Beit HaMikdash. He only gave it temporary Kedusha. So it's a fundamental machlokas, Rambam Ravid, on whether on both, a double machlokas.
But he does right there. He says, Sod Hashem Lireyav.
Yeah.
He says this. So it seems like that Lashon is that he's referring to that he got some
right,
sort of
Yeah, if you look at the whole right, and then the other.
Even without the gears of the Tov Sofer, he says Sod Hashem Lireo.
Right, the others want to say, he's saying Ezra got it, but right.
Oh,
but,
Sod Hashem goes
yeah, but,
Ezra, yeah.
right, but he's just saying, right,
but there I don't see, because they're the only reason, then he says that you don't get chorus. He doesn't say...
And that's what, yeah, so that's what, we'll get to the Ravid sheet in a second, yeah, whether it's so simple or not. But
doesn't he imply in Hilchos Pesach here that the reason why the Mishkan from the Midbar and in Shiloh is not called Bayis Rishon, but Bayis Rishon is from Shlomo, because it was not permanent, and this one
that's what they
that one is permanent.
That's what, right, the Rambam you mean?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, that's right. That's why Shiloh we don't have to worry about. That's it. It's over with, because that's not around anymore. That was only a temporary thing.
So in other words,
the Rambam writes
the other two are permanent.
Right. The Rambam writes it by Shiloh. Right. He says it there.
Yeah.
This whole discussion, that's where he writes it. Just remember, parenthetically, the Machokas Rambam Ravid, the Rav used to like saying, tongue-in-cheek, that there's a Machokas, we're talking about Shemitah, there's a whole discussion in terms of when the year of Shemitah is, Machokas, whether you count year 50 or you go 49. So the Rambam has his opinion, but he says, well, what can I do? The Gaonim, they live there, you follow the minute. So the Ravid says, what are you talking about? The Rambam's right. In other words, the Rav used to say as a joke, it's the only time, you have a Machokas Rambam and Ravid, and the Ravid passes like the Rambam. The Rambam says you follow the Gaonim's point of view on Shemitah, and the Ravid says, no, the Rambam's right, and we follow the Rambam Shita, but that's just parenthetical. So getting back here, so that's when it's a fundamental, or we'll see if it's a fundamental Machokas, but that's what it says, because that's what Laser is mentioning. If you look at the Ravid closely, he says, Hanichnas Ata Ein Lo Kares. It's a big difference. He doesn't, in other words, first, Mainas Kamina, assuming Pshuto, the Rambam says there is Kedushas HaMikshas Derivatism, so one major Nafkamina is going up on the Temple Mount. Again, there's certain places where where you can go, but let's assume our minig is not to go up at all, and because Tumas Mace we're not going to get rid of. If you go to the mikvah, the different places, you technically, if you follow the exact measurements, you can work out going a little bit. But our minig is not to go. So the fact, that's what the Meiri writes. They say he's quoting from the Ravid, and the Meiri writes the minig during his time was people went up. They followed the Ravid Shita. So others say, what are you talking about? That's not the Ravid didn't say you could go up. It's like somebody asked me a shayla on Shabbos, could they do X? And I'll say, well, I don't know if it's mutter, but you're not chayiv skila for what you just did. So the big difference, something's not chayiv skila, being mutter, all the Ravid says is, you're not chayiv kares. In fact, many point out, the Ravid has a klal, that if he argues with the Rambam, he'll write it, and the assumption is that the Rambam writes something, he doesn't comment, kind of like the Mechaber Ramo, you assume he agrees. So there are many other halachas, by a Tamei walking in, and other halachas of Yiras HaMikdash, where the Ravid doesn't say anything, implying he agrees. So that's how people, the Rabbi Kiva or others want to say, no, the Ravid also agrees it's Kedusha, except he says it's not Chayav Kare. So what's the Svara? So there's a interesting acronym, I think Rav Cook again, Rav Zolti, they want a machalek within the Kedushas HaMikdash between Kedushas Shlomo and Kedushas David. That they want to point out that David was a Makadosh, that's Kedushas HaRitzpah. That's the actual ground where the Shekhinah actually dwelled. And Kedushas of Shlomo, that's the actual building, the bayis. So they point out, if you look at the sources, they want to say it's Meduyak. If you look at the different psukim, they want to point out that the halacha of Kares and all those things are only by the din of Shlomo HaMelech, when you actually have the bayis, the Beis HaMikdash. But the Ravid also, according to Ravid, is it nothing? The Kedushas HaMikdash is nothing? No, the Ravid also agrees that there is a Kedusha Daraisa, that Kedusha is Ritzpah of David, and therefore that's also inherently has Kaddish, and therefore the Ravid also says it's Aser, but the Chi of Karis is only when the Beis HaMikdash is up on Shlomo. So that's how many Achronim want to try to buffer, because if you look at the Ravid, other places he seems not to disagree. But, some weren't, you have it also by Tumas Kohanim as well. The Machokas Rambam and Ravid, and also whether, I think it's by Bizman Hazeh, when all Tamei May, so does the Ravid actually say that it's okay, Kohanim now could be Tamei May? So this is, no, maybe you're not chayav for each time, but not that he's saying not be saying a more so similar. We have that, but that's what I want to point out. That's the yesod over there. That even according to the Rabbi, perhaps you have the kedushas hamikdash. And this the one last thing on Yerushalayim is we know there's a famous halacha. Who's responsible for breaking up a marriage? The Gemara tells us in Ksubas, the Mishnah, that if one spouse wants to move to Eretz Yisrael, another one doesn't, so therefore the one who doesn't is responsible for breaking up the marriage. Who cares who's responsible? Whether you get the ksuva or not. So they point out that and this halacha is also, and if you live in Tel Aviv and you want to move to Yerushalayim, because the mission talks in other places different levels of kedusha in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore also, the one who doesn't want to go to Yerushalayim, because that's what they want to point out. What's the halacha of a kol malin? So someone say it's based on the Ramban. The Ramban holds there's a chiyuv to live in Eretz Yisrael. Out the mitzvah of Yishav Eretz Yisrael, that's why you have to go. But they point out it's not true because there's no special mitzvah. Maybe there's an Indian, but there's no special mitzvah to live in Yerushalayim more than the Bnei Brak or somewhere else. So therefore it can't be based on that. So Rav Tukachinsky, the Air in his Sefer, the one who wrote the Gesher HaChaim, he has a Sefer on Yerushalayim and the Mikdash, many halachas he's quoted all the time on these areas. So he wants to say the pshat is, there's another, what's the concept that one who doesn't want to move to Eretz Yisrael is like breaking up the marriage, or you're in Eretz Yisrael, you don't want to go to Yerushalayim. So he points out there's another halach, and it's brought out in the same siman. And let's say the husband is from New York, the wife is from LA, so the halach is that you live in New York. Why? I mean, obviously unless it was worked out beforehand, but all things being equal, why? Because Amanas Kein Nasa, it's assumed that that's where you're going to live. And similarly, if they both live in New York, and someone wants to move LA, you don't have to move, you can assume Amanas Kein Nasa. However, let's say they're both from New York, and one spouse wants to move to Eretz Yisrael. So we do say, you're responsible for breaking up the marriage. What about Amanas Kein Nasa?
Who's responsible? The one who does not want to go to Israel.
Right. So therefore they point out what's the pshat. So they say it's nice, New York, it's nice that New York's your hometown, but that's only a temporary hometown. Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, that's a perpetual, that's a hometowns for thousands of years, etc. So, and in fact that's how he learns the famous Tosas in Ksubis. The Gemara Tosas writes that today there is no mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael. So there's a whole discussion on that, what he means exactly, and whether it still applies today. But he writes, Sakanas Drachim, the danger of going, and he quotes of Chaim HaKohen, who writes, it's difficult to keep the mitzvahs of Torah's word. So it's difficult, the lesson of Tosas is that because, it's Sakanas Drachim, in other words, what do you mean, Eino Noheg Bisman? He has a lesson like it's Eino Noheg. What do you mean, Eino Noheg? It is Noheg, but say I'm an honest. Like, what do you mean it's not Noheg? The mitzvah of Yisrael exists, I can't do it, so I'm an honest. What do you mean, Eino Noheg? So you're right, no, he's saying, Tosas is saying that the mitzvah is to live in Eretz Yisrael. But when he's saying, he's talking about this halacha, that's the context the Gemara is talking about. You can't kain almanas kain nasa, because if it's dangerous, if it's sakanas drachim to go, or it's too difficult to live there, trumas ha'maisos, then you can't say it was built in almanas halacha of forcing a spouse to live in Eretz Yisrael. That's what Tosas is saying, but not to say that there is no mitzvah. Even he wants to say, Tosas agrees, there is a mitzvah always to live in Eretz Yisrael. It's just based on the halacha, Eino Noeg, because, you can't claim it's Almanas Kein Nasa. Just to summarize, we discussed the different levels of Kedusha. We know there's Kedusha Shabbos, Kedusha Shantif, and that's a distinction in Eretz Yisrael. It's a two-tiered Kedusha. On one hand, it has an inherent Kedusha, Kvad Nasati. We had the Einos Davish, Einos Shalo. We had the Benos Chafka, we're already considered a Muksaf. On the other hand, we have the mitzvahs of Tliyas Vards don't begin until year 15. The Rambam writes you need Bias Kulchem. Even Bizman Bayisheni, you didn't even have it because it depends on us. The Jews during their Bayisheni, it was only temporary because not enough of them went on. And we discussed the issue of the Heter Bechira by Shemitah, all the different issues, whether you say Yeshkin, not. And even if, as the Beis HaLevi pointed out, that's a technical issue of Bias Kulchem, but Kedusha Eretz Yisrael has inherent Kedusha. And that's the machlokas by the Makam HaMikdash, the Rambam and Ravid in terms of whether walking up on the Temple Mount or the issue of Shchutei Chutz today, does it apply or not? And we want to point out that even the Ravid would agree that there is a Kedushas HaMikdash, that's the Kedushas of David, that remains forever, but in terms of Nichtas Ata in Chayav Kares, that's the second Kedusha of Kedusha Shlomo. And of course, whatever one's minhag is on Yom Yerushalayim, whether you're going to say Hallel, not say Hallel, you get into the halachic issue of Hallel. But at least we have to appreciate, and those who lived before 1907 don't take it for granted as much as we do, that to appreciate that the special day, and we thank God for Yerushalayim all the time. But on that day, we have a special feeling, for Eretz Yisrael, specifically, Yerushalayim.